You're okay, ma'am. You're safe now. Can you look at me?
They're still out there.
We'll take care of it. Right now, we just need to get you warm.
Dispatch, victim located. We're heading back to the vehicle.
Easy does it. Lean on me.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Creme de la Cringe. And my sidekick here, Trista's not feeling super well, so
it's all this dang smoke. I'm telling you,
it could be the
smoke.
We're very, very smoky here. So tonight we're going to talk about a murder case that took place in the 1800s, and this one teaches you to keep your mouth shut and never discuss money. Yes. If you have a hiding hole for money in your house, don't talk about it in front of people. Everybody leave it alone. Okay. So this one takes place, this lady named MaryAnn Lamp Lee was 70 years old. She's living at home in her house at 102 Mulligan Street. She was in excellent health, 70 years old anymore. That's not that old. I mean, hell, I'm almost there. I'm like, what? Yeah.
No, like if you think about it, like 70 really isn't that old anymore.
Back then in the 1800s.
Back then.
Yeah, but not anymore. She was in excellent health. She lived with her son at the house. Her son took his stepdaughter and her husband. They didn't live there, but he took the stepdaughter and her husband to a play in Jefferson. MaryAnn's grandson was going to stay behind and keep her company. Her grandson wanted to go across the street and visit some friends, because it's not like they had TV or anything. So he's probably like, Grams, I need to go. I need to go do something. So she said, it's fine. Go ahead. When he returned in about 30 minutes, he found the front gate was fastened to the little sidewalk in front of the house, and the stable door was open. And he thought, that's weird. He thought someone was stealing their chickens, so he summoned the police. I guess that's what they had in their stable. Maybe they didn't have horses. The police officer found that the house had been broken into, and Mrs. Lampley was laying on the floor dead, and about $1,200 worth of cash, silver, and gold had been taken.
That's a lot of money back then.
That's a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
The coroner found some abrasions on her neck and concluded it was murder. Near where Mrs. Lampley was laying was a table with cakes and wine on it. For 4 weeks, the police were stumped and couldn't offer any answers to who was the perpetrator or perpetrators. And Mrs. English, the daughter of MaryAnn, suspected the perpetrator. Okay, I had to do this like several times. Mrs. English, the daughter of MaryAnn, suspected the perpetrator was her son-in-law, Joshua Nicholson. So the daughter, son-in-law.
So it would have been the grandson-in-law.
Her daughter's husband. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of steps and in-laws and crap going on in this story. And I'm like, what? I got to have a whiteboard. I'm so bad. I'm like,
sometimes we need that for our stories, though, just to like kind of.
Yeah, like draw the pictures. Okay. She could find no clues, but she remembered that Joshua's children liked sweet things. Okay, so her grandkids then, right? Because Joshua's kid, so her grandkids loved sweets. And so her mom, MaryAnn, would bake pies and cakes and all that time for the grandkids, great grandkids. Wow, great grandkids at 70. I guess so, but I guess everybody.
I mean, yeah, my grandma's my mom's a great grandma now.
Right? Yeah, that's true.
And she's not even 60.
Whoa.
Yeah, but my parents had me young. Well, my mom got pregnant at 17 with my older brother, and then had me 18 months later.
Yeah. So they couldn't find any clues. They remembered that his kids like sweets. And there was the pies and the cakes on the table that weren't there when apparently her grandson left. And he was only gone 30 minutes. So Mr. Nicholson, so MaryAnn's granddaughter's husband could not account for his presence between the hours of 7:30 and 9 p.m. when the murder took place. So I guess her grandson, he was only there 30 minutes and he was like, I got to get out of here. He was climbing the walls. He was gone for that hour and a half, but he was home with his grandma after his dad left and he's like, I'm out. I got to go. Both he and his friend, so Joshua and his friend, Mr. Holohan, were immediately suspect in this after the families. And that's got to be hard because, I mean, this is your daughter's husband. That's got to be hard to go, okay, I think he's the one. I mean, that's got to be rough.
That's got to be like straight, pure honesty of your soul to not want to protect your family members.
And the family.
Yeah.
So Thomas Holohan owned a chisel and one was found near the body. They were arrested and they were taken to jail on suspicion of murder. And this is wild to me because think about our justice system now. Unless there's fingerprints, they're not taking you to jail on a suspicion of murder for an tool. This is what, so we'll go through this and you'll be like, what? Okay, so on the night of the arrest, Nicholson believed his friend Holloway would turn state's evidence. So now they're flipping on each other right away. The case was moved to Arundel County, Annapolis, Maryland. It took place in a different county, but they moved it because apparently MaryAnn Lampley and her family was pretty well known, so they had to move it. Thomas Sprague, he's the first witness. The trial took place May 9th, 1873. So Thomas Sprague takes the stand. He said that Holohan and a guy named Tucker boarded with his mother. So they rented a room, and that was really, really common. Happened all the time back then in the early part of 1873. And he saw a toolbox in Holohan's room. But at this point, there was no discussion of chisel. He just said, yeah, I know that Thomas had some tools. Big deal. Dr. Butler, the medical examiner, was called to the stand, and he performed the post-mortem examination of Mrs. Lampley's body. And he said, judging from appearance, I would say the death was produced by violence, most probably by a violent blow or bruise on the abdomen. All appearances
that'd be a pretty violent blow.
I know. And then he said all appearances were consistent with death from suffocation. We found on the dead body a number of discolorations, some of which were produced by violence and others attributed to post-mortem causes. Maybe the police moving the body, somebody was trying to revive her somehow. I don't know. Mrs. Sprague testified that Holohan rented a room from her. And at one point, she went to borrow a file and had looked in the toolbox in his room for the file. And she never saw a chisel in the toolbox. She said she's familiar with the shape of a chisel and never saw one. Holohan boarded with her until his arrest. And on cross-examination, she admitted she could have overlooked the chisel since she wasn't looking for it. She was looking for a file. And yeah, you're digging through, like for a Phillips screwdriver, you're not going to notice the flathead, really. I mean, you're just going to, No,
because you're like on a one-track mind of what you want.
Mrs. Lampley's daughter, Mrs. English, testified that. So is this the other daughter? So this case really, I had to put together like 9 articles because they all had little snippets. And it was so hard to keep track of these people. So Mrs. Lampley's daughter, Mrs. English, testified that she didn't know Holohan, but she said that Nicholson, because of course he's a son-in-law, maybe not to English, maybe to the other daughter, knew where the family kept money, that they had a little tin box full of gold, silver, and cash in a chest, a big like trunk upstairs, because he'd been there. He'd overheard it. And the day of the murder, she took tea with her mother and said Nicholson was with her mother at the house earlier in the day. And when she entered her mother's kitchen, she noticed all the pies and cakes that Mrs. Lampley was baking for them to come over later, for the great grandkids to come over because they liked their sweets. She noticed her mother had wrapped some of them so that Mr. Nicholson could take some of them with him, and indicated to Mr. Nicholson and she indicated so, like, hey, I wrapped this up for you. So when you leave, you can take these cakes home with the kids. Another person who testified is Mrs. Benjamin Cole. I hate it that they never gave women their names.
I know.
It was
It's
always
so.
Mrs. the male name.
Mhm.
Anyway, she's another of Mrs. Lampley's daughter, and she said she didn't know if Nicholson knew the hiding place where the family kept money because she was never around when he was there when they had those discussions. She just couldn't remember. She's like, I don't know if he knew. John, who's Mrs. Lampley's son, who took his stepdaughter, okay, and her husband to the theater, testified that he had kept $1,000 in cash, some gold and some silver in the small box in the home. He was actually going to take it to the bank that week and deposit it. So I don't know if he was like a storekeeper or what he did, and he'd get cash and then he'd put it away and then take it to the bank. You got to remember too that even though we had banks back in the 1800s, they weren't like, if you kept, this is wild, and I learned this from researching some of our cases. If you kept your money in a bank, they would give you like bills to spend, but those bills, maybe another bank wouldn't honor them. They didn't have standardized money in a lot of countries.
Really?
We didn't have it here for quite a long time.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so every bank like had their own currency. So if you gave me a banknote because you bought something from me, and then I'd have to take it to your bank.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was really wild. I didn't realize that until we started these really old cases. So during the trial, Deputy Marshal Frey and Detective Cohn testified that Nicholson confessed to the murder. He said that he and Holohan had met in the street about 7 p.m. and that he saw Holohan had the chisel. They went to Mrs. Lampley's house. Okay, so Nicholson's confessing. They go to Mrs. Lampley's house and offered them cake and wine, where she offered them cake and wine and wrapped up the remaining cake for Nicholson to take home to the kids. And she had some stuff she had wrapped up earlier for them. And Holohan had excused himself from the house for a moment, where he went outside and he closed the shutters on the front of the home, saying he was worried that lightning from the storm that was incoming may frighten her. So he goes outside and he closes all the shutters because it must have been a busy street and he didn't want people looking in. He came back in the house and then he proceeded to kick her. Nicholson was begging him not to kill her. Then Nicholson left the home and Holohan proceeded to kill her and then rob the house. He met up with Nicholson later and offered him half of the money, and Nicholson refused it because he was all about taking the money, but not about the murder. On May 21st, 1873, Thomas Holohan confessed to the crime finally. And he said, on January 2nd, the day of the murder, I met Josh Nicholson and went to his house with him and learned there that the family was going to the theater, leaving the old woman home alone, and determined to do the deed then and arranged all the particulars. We entered the house without knocking and found Mrs. Lampley sitting in a rocking chair. During the evening, she treated us to cake and wine, and I was putting up cake for Nicholson's children when he gave the signal. So now he's saying that Nicholson was, and I choked her and then struck her in the stomach. And then she was dead. We carried her to the adjoining room. I remained with the body while Josh went upstairs and broke into the trunk to get the box full of money. I went upstairs for a moment. He handed me the silver. We then left the house by the stable. And on reaching the street, Nicholson gave me all the money, which I kept until January 8th, and then divided it with him. So Josh said he never took any of the money. Thomas said, oh, yes, he did. Tucker knew nothing about it and received some of the money. I'm not sure who Tucker is. They mentioned him a couple of times, and I'm like, who? Tucker. He never came up anywhere else. Anyway, he received none of the money. I fear this Nicholson may escape, and if so, there's no just law in the state of Maryland. I make this statement that it may be published and that citizens may know the truth. So they're telling some conflicting stuff here.
Yeah.
During the closing arguments, Nicholson and Holohan tried to escape the courtroom, and this was wild. So they're sitting in the court. They have a prisoner's box. So it's kind of like our, well, we don't really have a prisoner's box. We set everybody at a table. But if you look at shows in England, even now, they have a prisoner's box. So you're sitting.
Yeah, I have noticed that. Yeah.
So maybe at this point, our courts were kind of designed to look like those. So they're sitting in the prisoner's box, which is a small box surrounded by railing. It's only about 3 feet high and situated just behind the railing of the bar. So there's the judge, and then they have a bar, and then they have the prisoner's box. While attention was on the defense attorney, Holohan rose to his feet and drew from his vest a slingshot. Rising, he struck the marshal, said like a terrible blow, and cursed at him. So he had something, and he's like whapping the marshal on the head. At the same time, Nicholson jumped over the prisoner's box and bolted for the door. So this is definitely planned. One woman in the gallery jumped on top of her seat and began shrieking. Isn't that like come on.
Typical women.
The detectives grabbed Holohan and rapped him on the head and swore they would shoot him if he made any further resistance. Judge Miller ordered the prisoner should be given into the custody of the sheriff. Holohan was bleeding from the head wound he received during the scuffle, but he didn't seem to notice it. And many people in the gallery rushed forward to subdue the prisoners. Like they jumped over too, and they're like, "We're going to help." And they shouted, "Kill him!" Like the people were just mad.
Look at how different it was back then.
I know.
Wow.
At this point, Holohan told the court he didn't care a damn whether they hanged him or not, and they could take him out now and hang him if they chose. The prisoners were sat back in the box. Now they're shackled and bleeding from all the blows to their head, and court resumed. Like court would be over for the day here.
Yeah.
It would be taken into the infirmary.
Oh, yeah.
They're like bleeding. They don't care.
They're like, you're fine. Like, you're
fine.
good.
Sit down, shut up. So the jury was presented the case and left the courtroom at about 1:15 that afternoon. 10 minutes later, they reached their verdict and were let back in the courtroom. They should have just raised their hands right then and there.
Been like, you're guilty.
Yeah. The judge said, before the verdict is given, the prisoners must be released from handcuffs. I guess that was I don't know. I will say to them, any attempt to escape will be met with severe and exemplary punishment. Beside any demonstration on their part would be futile. There are enough persons present to secure them. So the judge wasn't having it. He's like, don't do a thing. Holohan stated, I won't escape, Your Honor. The victim was read, and they were both found guilty of murder in the first degree, and then they were shackled again. After the verdict was read, Holohan said, I wish, Your Honor, you would exclude that prize fighter, alluding to John English, Mrs. Lampley's son, from your list of deputies, but because apparently he was there, maybe he's a deputy, I don't know. My hands are tied and I have no chance with him. He also bowed to the jury and responded sarcastically to them, thank you. I mean, this guy's crazy. Whatever. The judge then stated, Mr. Sheriff, convey these, provide as many men as necessary. Start again. Provide as many men as necessary. Third time. Provide as many men as are necessary to guard them night and day. Both men passed the night in jail, chained to the floor. There were 9 men guarding them, 3 at a time, and they would rotate. They weren't having their escape.
No.
So this, the trial was May. So in June, the death warrant came. Okay. So it read, and it was read aloud to them and to the public. To George P. Kane, Esquire, Sheriff of Baltimore City, greeting. Whereas by a warrant under the Great Seal of the State of Maryland, heretofore on the 12th day of May, 1873, to you directed, you were commanded. Okay, so here we go. It was in May, but there was a problem, and they talk about this. That's why it was June when it was read. So It says on the 12th day of May, 1873, you directed, you were commanded in pursuance of the judgment and the sentence by the Circuit Court for Anne Arundel County at April term in 1873 in the state of Maryland, in the case of the state of Maryland against a certain Thomas Holohan, alias Thomas Richards, alias Thomas Whalen, to execute the sentence of the court upon Thomas Holohan, alias Thomas Richards, alias Thomas Whalen, on Friday the 13th of June, 1873. So Friday the 13th. So they had a problem and they were supposed to be executed. Apparently they were supposed to be executed in May. For whatever reason, it didn't happen. There was a problem with probably getting the supplies. I have no idea. Maybe there was a storm. I don't know. So this date then was later changed to August 1st for unknown reasons. So it's kind of crazy that they've had all these delays. But Holohan took the news with composure. Nicholson took to religious fervor in the days before the hanging. So he was praying a lot.
Oh, I don't doubt that.
Yeah, I think I would too, even if I wasn't. They say in war, everyone's a Christian in war or something like that. That because you're so afraid that you find prayer comforting.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. The gallows were erected on the north end of the jail in a small area. The structure was 27 feet high. The platform was 18 feet off the ground. The crossbeam 9 feet higher. From the view of the south was completely obstructed by the jail, but from the north and west sides, the gallows were visible to the public. At 8:30, people started to assemble on the hill outside the jail as if it were a play. On August 1st, immediately after breakfast, the Young Men's Christian Association conducted a prayer meeting in Nicholson's cell because he's very Christian now. Several hymns were sung, the sacrament was delivered, the prisoners were quite calm and expressed their confidence in Christ. At 10:10 a.m., they ascended the steps of the platform smiling. Sheriff Kane said Holohan wanted to address the observers, and Holohan stated, "Gentlemen and brothers, I acknowledge that my sentence is just. I am perfectly willing to give up my life for the crime I have committed. There is nothing like Christianity and brotherly love." And then he turned to the warden and deputies and he said, "I die in the faith." Nicholson was next to make a statement. He said, "My punishment is just, and I warn you all against the love of money, against evil company. I leave my dear wife and precious children to the hands of a merciful God." Holohan then stepped forward and gave another statement. "I freely forgive all my enemies and hope they will forgive me." Nicholson responded, "And I also return the same." The men then took their positions on the platform. Sheriff Kane adjusted the nooses on their necks. After 10 minutes of prayer, the drop fell and the execution was accomplished.
That's like what it's like some soap opera between them up on the, gallows, meeting their maker. And I'm like, like, were you two in love with each other? Because
crazy, isn't it?
That's just wild. Like,
I just love. I love the descriptive way they wrote everything.
Yes.
17 and 1800s.
Yes, because you couldn't do that now.
No, you couldn't, because everything has to be sanitized for our own protection. And it's really amazing. It's really amazing. But anyway, that's the story of Mrs. Lampley and her poor family and what they went through, all because her son, who had a little bit of money in the house, and they talked about it freely in front of the son-in-law. Don't talk about hiding.
Just always remember, and this is something I live by, not everyone's your friend. Not everyone's your family. And sometimes who needs friends or or enemies when you've got friends and family?
Yep. Yep.
I mean,
So they thought he was safe because he was one of the family, but how many people are murdered by their own family parent?
oh yeah,
So
it's
it's just
wild.
yeah. Anyway, crazy story. I just finished up another one that is really wild. Maybe we'll bring it to you next week. Until then, signing off, everybody. Thank you for joining the show, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye, guys.